Hello, welcome. Let's spend a few minutes with Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This book was originally published back in 2017, and from what I understand, it is the sixth book that Andrew Sean Greer has published. It is the first of his books that I have read, however. This book wound up winning the Pulitzer Prize, not the Pulitzer Prize. I typically want to pronounce this Pulitzer, as does one of the characters in the book, winds up actually winning a Pulitzer Prize and comments that he's been mispronouncing the name of this prize for his entire life. And he only finds this out when he wins one. I also always want to call this the Pulitzer Prize, but this is basically why I decided to pick this book up and read it. So I just came across this book sort of in happenstance. My partner picked it up at the airport on a trip once and brought it home, and then the cover for some reason never really appealed to me, so I put off reading it, and ultimately I decided to pick it up and give it a read, mainly just because of the Pulitzer Prize win, but it turned out to be a lot of fun, and really I enjoyed it quite a bit. So what it's about this character Arthur Less, who is about to turn 50. So he sort of has this perfect storm of things happening to him that sort of sets him into, a very unsettled state where he decides to go on this trip around the world. So yeah, he's going to turn 50, and then his this guy he's had a relationship with for, I think it's something like 9 years, is about to go off and marry someone else at the same time. And then also he's a writer, and so he's had a somewhat semi-successful career as a writer and has had at least one fairly successful novel. But his latest novel that he's written was rejected by his publisher, and so his publisher that he thought he had a very good relationship with and was going to continue publishing his books turned down his most recent one. And so he gets these invitations periodically to literary events around the world also because of his career as a writer, as well as he in the past, when he was young, was in a relationship with a poet from a school of writing called, in the book it's called the Russian River School. And what I think it kind of corresponds to maybe is like the Beat generation. So back in like the 80s, he was a young man. He got involved with a older, middle-aged at that point, like 40s-year-old poet from this Russian River School, who was a very famous celebrity poet. And so he's still also known through his connection to that famous poet, even though he and this poet, they had a relationship for quite a while, and then they went their separate ways. And that's when he started having this relationship with this younger fella, Freddie. So Freddie, we get the picture, had always wanted to kind of have a serious relationship with Arthur, but Arthur seems to not be able to see that they could even have a serious relationship because he's so much older. I guess Arthur, doesn't really realize, he was in this relationship with an older person also when he was a younger guy. But in any case, Freddie ultimately goes off and is going to marry someone else. Well, what Arthur decides to do is to just accept all of these invitations to these sort of one-off and kind of offbeat literary events all around the world. So he starts out, so the book, he lives in San Francisco. So his first stop is New York, and then from New York he goes to Mexico. From Mexico he goes to Italy. From Italy he goes to Germany. From Germany to France. From France to Morocco. From Morocco to India. And from India to Japan, and then back home again to San Francisco as a changed person, or at least we think he might have had a little growth during this journey. He meets a lot of really interesting people along the way. He's sort of an offbeat, eccentric person as we see him from the outside. He doesn't see himself this way, though. So the way the book's written, we get this eye into him sort of his point of view, and then how others see him, and they'll tell him what, periodically, but, I think he has a hard time, as we all do, of actually being able to understand how others see us as opposed to how we see ourselves. And part of this is because of how our brain lies to us. So when he's in Morocco, this is when he's going to turn 50, and he meets a woman there whose name is Zora, who it turns out is also about to turn 50. Her birthday is the day prior to his, and so they, to come to find out, are on this camel caravan in Morocco during their birthdays. And so she has this portion of the book that I thought I'd just read about how your brain lies. So she's actually going through a breakup herself. She's sort of devastated because her longtime partner has left her for someone else, which she thinks of as a form of insanity. And she tells Arthur, "The brain is so wrong all the time," she says, turning to the dark landscape again. "Wrong about what time it is, and who people are, and whose home is. Wrong about what time it is, and who people are, and where home is. It's wrong, 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 the lying brain. The insanity of her lover has bewildered and hurt and incandescent. And yet what she has said, the lying brain, this is familiar. This has happened to him. Not exactly like this, not utter terrifying madness, but he knows his brain has told him things he has traveled around the world to forget. That the mind cannot be trusted is a certainty." Yeah, because the stories we tell, our brain tells us, sometimes they're destructive, right? And they're not true. They're either overly inflating you or, just trying to defeat you somehow. So, yeah, the brain's not always so trustworthy, and I think that's an important thing to remember in life. Yeah, so some other sort of thoughts. So Arthur's kind of like a fool. He gets described by, whenever other people are describing him, a lot of times they will describe him as being really, innocent, like a 50-year-old or a 49-year-old through part of the book, year old boy, like a very innocent sort of innocence to him, that there's when people meet him, they feel that he's got some sort of boyish type of innocence. And this approaching life like a fool is something that, I really enjoy this when it's in novels sometimes. It's in Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. A secret to a successful life is somehow having the wisdom to have the wisdom of age, but then the innocence of a fool in your approach to life, to lead a successful life. And so Arthur doesn't think he's leading a successful life. Everyone around him thinks he is. So this is, again, the brain, I think, sort of telling him maybe an incorrect version of his reality. So yeah, another kind of real cool quote I thought I would talk about was, he eventually, this is actually from his first partner who's still alive, although he's very old at this point, and he's telling Arthur about they're having this conversation, and he's telling Arthur about a documentary he saw about time travel, and that if to have time travel, per this documentary, you could only go back as far as when the first machine was built. So you build a time machine, say you build a time machine now, today, you would need to wait until a few years, like maybe 10 years, a decade from now, build another time machine, and then you could go back in time to today, because you could only go back in time as far back as there was another time machine, according to this story, according to this documentary that this character is telling Arthur. And Arthur says, so we could never kill Hitler. And his partner Robert says, but it's like that already. When you meet people, you meet them, say, when you're 30, and you can never really imagine them any younger than that. You've seen pictures of me, Arthur. You've seen me at 20. So Arthur goes on to say, yeah, and you were handsome at 20, but you can't imagine someone earlier than when you knew them. And so this is kind of, I think, the beauty of having really old friends or having family. Your family, or they knew you when you were young, when you were either a child or a young person. And so there's always that sort of, those are the only people who can really relate to you back in that era. And so, I think about, I have a friend of mine that we've been friends since we were 18, so it's fun to talk to him because he remembers that, so we can kind of be 18 together again because we can talk about that period of time when we were together at 18. I can't just have that conversation, for example, with you because you would not be able to relate to me as an 18-year-old. So I thought that was really an interesting concept. And then there's this quote about this that I thought was really kind of cool. And it's Robert saying to Arthur, "Arthur, I look at you and I still see that boy on the beach with the red toenails. Not at first, but my eyes adjust. I see that 21-year-old boy in Mexico. I see that man in a hotel room in Rome. I see the young writer holding his first book. I look at you, and you're young. You'll always be that way for me, but not for anyone else, Arthur. People who meet you now will never be able to imagine you young." And that's so true. That's part of aging. And I think, you see this when sometimes the elderly, the young people get bored by their stories because they can't relate to like their grandparents as young people. It's just very difficult to do, if not impossible. So I thought that was really cool. And then there's another quote before I run out of time that I just thought was really pretty about a sunset. So this Zora character, this is in Morocco, she's telling Arthur, just stop with all the problems and everything and just enjoy the sunset on the camel. And Arthur says, or the thought is, "It is, after all, almost a miracle they are here. Not because they've survived the booze, the hashish, the migraines, not that at all. It's that they've survived everything in life. Humiliations and disappointments and heartaches and missed opportunities, bad dads and bad jobs and bad sex and bad drugs, all the trips and mistakes and face plants of life, to have made it to 50 and to have made it here, to this frosted cake landscape, these mountains of gold, the little table they can now see sitting on the dunes, set with olives and pita and glasses and wine chilling on ice, with the sun waiting more patiently than any camel for their arrival. So yes, as with almost every sunset, but with this one in particular." So yeah, I thought that was just really pretty because this is like, just to be alive, to just keep living, and to being 50 is better than not being 50 if you didn't survive all through your life, all those different challenges and mistakes and dangers that everybody faces at any moment in life. Just to make it and have a birthday at all is a beautiful thing. So I love that thought. I thought it was cool. All right, I think I'll end the chat with that. My next chat is actually a buddy read, Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. So I'm buddy reading this with the channels Everyone Who Reads This Must Converse, Richardson Reads, and the Bookish Bryants. I'll link to their channels down below. I will have a chat. I'm just going to do one chat on the book once I'm finished with it, but the buddy read has been very fun. We're using this app to exchange ideas about the book as we're making our way through it. So it's been really a fun experience so far. So the book is so far very, it's really grabbed me. So it's really interesting. So I'll have more on that, have a chat on that coming up before too terribly long. So until next time, take care. Bye.